I never thought I'd be homeless at 61. The morning of April 20th, 2024, started like every morning since Sandra died. I woke up alone in our bed, reached for her out of habit, and found cold sheets. 2 months. 2 months since the heart attack took her, and I still wasn't used to the silence. But that morning was different. That morning, I had to bury my wife. The funeral was at Cherry Hills Community Church, the same place where Sandra and I got married 33 years ago. The same wooden pews, the same stained glass windows filtering Colorado sunlight into streams of blue and gold. Everything the same, except Sandra was in a casket at the front of the sanctuary instead of standing beside me in a white dress. I sat in the first row with my children. Kevin flew in from Seattle 2 days ago, my 32-year-old son, a high school history teacher with Sandra's dark hair and thoughtful eyes. He kept his arm around my shoulders through the entire service. Brianna sat on my other side, but she might as well have been 1,000 miles away. My daughter looked terrible. At 29, she'd always been vibrant, quick to laugh, confident, full of life. But the woman sitting beside me was a ghost. Pale skin, hollow eyes, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She wore an expensive black dress that didn't suit her, and she kept checking her phone every few minutes. "Bree," I whispered during the pastor's eulogy, "you okay?" She didn't look at me, just nodded once, mechanical, and went back to staring at her phone. I glanced past her. Justin Preston sat next to his wife, one hand possessively on her knee. My son-in-law was polished as always, expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. Behind them sat Harrison and Linda Preston, Justin's parents. Harrison caught my eye and nodded slowly, his expression somewhere between sympathy and something I couldn't quite read. The look made my skin crawl, though I couldn't say why. Sandra had never liked the Prestons. 6 years ago, when Brianna first brought Justin home, my wife took one look at him and said, "I don't trust that family." I told her she was being dramatic. That was one of the last arguments we ever had. God, I wished I'd listened. The eulogy ended. People stood to share memories. Sandra's coworker from the library talked about her dedication to helping people find answers. Our neighbor, David Miller, spoke about her legendary garden and how she'd taught half the neighborhood to grow tomatoes. Kevin talked about his mom's fierce love and quiet strength. When it was my turn, I couldn't do it. I stood up, walked to the podium, looked at all those faces staring back at me with pity, and the words died in my throat. How do you summarize 33 years in a few sentences? How do you explain that the person who made you whole is gone? I stepped down without saying anything. Kevin squeezed my hand. Brianna still didn't look up from her phone. After the service, people lined up to offer condolences. Handshakes, hugs, murmured words that all blurred together. Harrison Preston was near the end of the line. He shook my hand with a grip that lasted a second too long. "Kenneth," he said, his voice smooth and practiced, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Sandra was a remarkable woman." "Thank you. If there's anything my family can do, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." He smiled, but his eyes were calculating. Family takes care of family. I didn't know what he meant by that. I wouldn't understand until the next morning. The cemetery was quiet. They lowered Sandra's casket into the ground while a cold April wind blew across the grass. I stood at the edge of the grave, holding the urn that would later hold her ashes. We were doing cremation after the burial service per her wishes, and I felt something break inside me. Kevin stood on my left, Brianna on my right, but she was on her phone again. Justin's hand was on her shoulder, keeping her in place like a puppet master with his strings. "Brianna," I said quietly, "please put the phone away. This is your mother." She flinched but didn't move. Justin's hand tightened on her shoulder. "She's just processing grief in her own way, Kenneth," Justin said smoothly. "Everyone grieves differently." I wanted to argue, but I was too tired, too broken, so I let it go. I should have fought harder, for Brianna, for all of us, but I was about to lose everything, and I didn't even know it yet. The knock came at 8:30 the next morning. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sandra in that hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere, her hand going cold in mine. So I got up at dawn and sat in the kitchen with coffee I didn't drink, staring at the garden she'd loved. The knock was sharp, insistent. I opened the front door. Brianna stood on the porch. Behind her were Harrison, Linda, and Justin Preston, all 4 of them dressed like they were heading to a business meeting. Harrison held a leather briefcase. My daughter wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad," she said, her voice flat and rehearsed, "we need to talk." Something in my chest tightened. "Okay, come in." "No." Harrison stepped forward. "This won't take long, Kenneth. May we come inside?" They didn't wait for an answer. Harrison walked past me into my living room like he owned it. Linda followed, then Justin with his hand on Brianna's back, pushing her gently forward. I closed the door, my hands starting to shake. We stood in the living room, the same room where Sandra and I used to watch old movies on Friday nights, where we'd hosted Brianna's graduation party, where Kevin learned to walk. Harrison looked around appraisingly, running his hand along the mantel where Sandra's ashes would eventually sit. "Kenneth," Harrison said, turning to face me. At 64, he was broad and imposing, a real estate mogul who'd built an empire in Denver. "We're keeping this simple. This house now belongs to my family. You have until noon to pack and leave." The words didn't make sense. I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "The house is mine now, Dad." Brianna finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my chest tighten. Guilt, fear, resignation. "Mom left it to me in her will. I'm sorry, but you need to find somewhere else to live." "That's not possible." My hands shook. "Your mother and I bought this house together." "Sandra left a will." Harrison pulled a folded document from his briefcase. "Signed and notarized. Everything goes to Brianna, the house, the savings, the car. You have no legal right to be here." He handed me the papers. I took them with numb fingers. The document looked official. Legal language I couldn't process. Sandra's signature at the bottom, next to a notary stamp dated April 15th, 2024. 5 days before she died. But something was wrong. Sandra would have told me. We'd talked about wills after her diagnosis 8 months ago, but she'd said we didn't need to rush. The heart attack came too fast, too suddenly. She wouldn't have. "I need to call a lawyer," I said. "Go ahead." Harrison checked his Rolex. "But everything's in order, and you still have to be out by noon, 3.5 hours. I ignored him. I looked at my daughter. "Brianna." My voice cracked. "Please, this is your mother's house. You grew up here." "I know." Her voice broke for just a second, and I thought she might back down. Then Justin put his hand on her shoulder, and whatever light I'd seen in her eyes went out. "I'm sorry, Dad, but it's done." Justin's fingers dug into her shoulder, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to control. Brianna leaned into him like she had no choice, and I saw it then. The way she held herself, tense and small. The way she kept glancing at Justin before speaking. The way fear had replaced the confidence my daughter used to have. Sandra had tried to warn me about this. For 6 years, she'd said something was wrong with Brianna's marriage, and I'd dismissed her concerns as overprotective. "Brianna, honey," I started. "We should go," Linda Preston interrupted, her voice sharp. "Let Kenneth pack in peace." Harrison nodded. "We'll be back at noon to check. I suggest you use your time wisely." They turned to leave. Brianna lingered for just a moment, and I saw her mouth move like she wanted to say something, but Justin's hand was still on her shoulder, and the words never came. The door closed behind them. I stood alone in my living room, the living room I was losing, and for the first time since Sandra died, I let myself cry. I called Kevin first. My son answered on the second ring. "Dad, what's wrong?" I told him everything. The eviction, the will, Harrison's threats, Brianna's guilt and fear. Kevin was silent for a long moment. Then, "I'm getting on the first flight home. Don't do anything until I get there." "I have 3 hours." Then stall. "I'll call a lawyer." "Dad." His voice broke. "Mom wouldn't do this. Something's wrong." I knew he was right. But standing in our bedroom, looking at the clothes Sandra would never wear again, I didn't have the energy to fight. I spent 2 hours in a fog, threw clothes into a suitcase, grabbed medications, packed Sandra's ashes with shaking hands, wrapping the urn in one of her favorite sweaters. Everything else, furniture, photos, 33 years of our life together, I left behind. At 11:45, I stood on the porch with 2 suitcases and a box containing my wife's remains. David Miller found me there. My neighbor for 20 years took one look at my face and said, "Jesus, Kenneth, what happened?" I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight. "Come on." David picked up a suitcase. "You're staying with us." David's guest room was small but clean. His wife Rebecca brought me tea I didn't drink and a sandwich I couldn't eat. They didn't ask questions, just gave me space and kindness I didn't deserve. That evening, I finally read the will Harrison had given me. The language was clear. Brianna Taylor Preston, sole beneficiary. The house, the savings, Sandra's car, everything went to our daughter. The will was dated April 15th, signed in the presence of a notary, completely legal. But something nagged at me. Something about the house itself. We'd bought it in October 1995, right after Kevin was born. Sandra had inherited money from her grandmother, $20,000 for the down payment. Sandra handled all the paperwork herself because I was traveling for work. She was proud of that, proud of securing our first real home. What name had she used? I grabbed my phone and called David. "I need to get into my house," I said. "There are documents I need." "Kenneth, they'll call the cops. Harrison posted on Facebook. They're at dinner in Cherry Creek. Please, David, I need the original deed." 20 minutes later, we parked down the street from my house. The windows were dark. David kept the engine running while I used my key at the back door. They hadn't changed the locks yet. The house felt wrong. In one day, they'd started erasing us. Sandra's herb garden by the kitchen window, gone. Family photos from the hallway, removed. New curtains already up in the living room. I went straight to Sandra's office and pulled open the filing cabinet, found the folder marked House 1995. Inside was the original deed, Deed of Trust, recorded October 15th, 1995. Owner, Sandra Waverly, not Sandra Taylor, not Sandra Gardner, my last name before she took Taylor when we married in '91. Sandra Waverly, her maiden name, and no mention of me at all. My phone buzzed. "David, car in driveway, get out, now." I shoved the deed in my jacket and ran. Back at David's, I stared at the document under the kitchen light. If Sandra had put the house in her maiden name alone, then legally it had been hers to leave to anyone. The will Harrison showed me could be real. But why? Why had Sandra done it, and why hadn't she told me? My phone rang at midnight. "Kevin, Dad." My son's voice was tight. "I just talked to Brianna. She said you're not at the house anymore. What's going on?" I told him everything again. The deed, Sandra's maiden name, the confusion. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "Dad," he finally said, "do you remember Mom talking about a storage unit?" "What?" "Last time I visited, back in February, Mom mentioned she'd rented one in Lakewood. She was putting things there for safekeeping." He paused. "She made me promise not to tell anyone, not even you. She said it was important." My hand tightened on the phone. "Did she say what was in it?" "No, but she gave me a key." His voice was shaking now. "She said if anything happened to her, I should make sure you got it. She said, Dad, she said it would protect us." "Kevin, I'm flying home first thing tomorrow morning, and we're going to that storage unit. Whatever Mom left there, whatever she was hiding, we're going to find it." After he hung up, I sat in David's dark guest room and thought about my wife. Sandra had known she was sick. Her heart had been failing for 8 months. She'd had time to plan, to prepare. She'd rented a storage unit and hidden things there, things she hadn't wanted anyone to find until after she was gone. I looked at the deed again. Sandra's maiden name, written in careful legal script. She'd bought this house in her name alone 30 years ago. She'd kept secrets. She'd made plans. And suddenly, for the first time since Brianna stood on my porch and told me I didn't belong in my own home, I felt something other than grief. I felt hope. Kevin's flight landed at 9:30 the next morning. I picked him up at Denver International, and we drove straight to Lakewood Self-Storage without stopping. My son looked exhausted. He'd been up all night, he said, researching property law and inheritance. He had a theory, but he wanted to see what was in the storage unit first. Mom was deliberate about everything, Kevin said as we pulled into the storage facility parking lot. She didn't do anything by accident. If she rented a unit and didn't tell you, there's a reason. The facility was tucked between a tire shop and a Mexican restaurant. Anonymous, easy to miss. Kevin checked the key Sandra had sent him. Unit 247. We found it on the second floor. Kevin's hands shook as he fitted the key into the padlock. The lock clicked open. He pulled up the rolling door. Inside was a 10 by 10 space, just 3 things: a filing cabinet, a cardboard box labeled legal documents, and another box labeled emergency equipment. I opened the filing cabinet first. 3 drawers, organized with Sandra's meticulous precision. The first folder in the top drawer was marked House Original Deed. Inside was a copy of the same deed I'd found last night, Sandra Waverly, sole owner. But there was also a letter, handwritten, dated March 2nd, 2024. Kenneth. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for the secrets. The house is in my maiden name for a reason. I did it to protect us, to protect you. I'll explain everything when you read the trust documents. Look in the second drawer. Everything you need is there. I love you. I've always loved you. Sandra. My hands trembled as I opened the second drawer. Inside was a folder marked Trust and Will 2024. Kevin pulled out the documents. The first was a will, Sandra's real will, dated March 1st, 2024. It was notarized, official, and completely different from the will Harrison had shown me. This will left everything to me. The house, the savings, Sandra's car. Brianna and Kevin were provided for through smaller inheritances, but the primary beneficiary was me. Dad, Kevin said, his voice shaking. Look at this. He handed me another document, a trust agreement, irrevocable trust, established March 1st, 2024. Grantor, Sandra Waverly Taylor. Trustee, James Cooper, Esquire. Beneficiary, Kenneth Taylor. I scanned the legal language, my heart pounding. Sandra had placed the house into an irrevocable trust with James Cooper, a lawyer I'd never heard of, as the trustee. Upon Sandra's death, the house would be protected for my use for the remainder of my life. Brianna and Kevin would inherit after I passed, but they could not force a sale or remove me. It was airtight, legal, dated 6 weeks before her death. Who the hell is James Cooper? I asked. Kevin was already searching on his phone. Law office in downtown Denver, estate planning specialist. He looked up. Dad, if this trust is real, then Harrison's will is either fake or invalid. Why wouldn't Sandra tell me? Kevin pulled out another paper, another letter, this one longer. My dearest Kenneth, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I pray you found this before it was too late. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. There wasn't time and I was afraid. Harrison Preston is dangerous. He's drowning in debt. His empire is collapsing. Our house is worth nearly $1 million now. He wants it. Brianna is trapped. I tried to reach her, but Harrison and Justin have isolated her completely. She's terrified. Whatever you think of what she's done, remember she's being controlled. She's still our daughter. I've made arrangements. The house is protected in an irrevocable trust through James Cooper. He's a good man. I've known him 20 years. He knows everything. Call him. He'll help you fight back. There's one more thing, my love. In the box labeled emergency equipment, you'll find cameras. I installed them in the house starting in March. They've been recording everything. Watch the videos, all of them. Then do what needs to be done. Protect our children, especially Brianna. Forever yours, Sandra. Kevin and I stared at each other. Cameras? I whispered. Kevin moved to the second box, cut through the packing tape. Inside, carefully wrapped in bubble wrap, were 4 small wireless cameras. Beneath them, receipts from an electronics store dated February 28th, installation instructions with Sandra's handwritten notes, and a portable hard drive. Kevin held up the hard drive. His hands were shaking. Dad, he said quietly, how many rooms are in the house? 4 main rooms, living room, kitchen, office, and I stopped. Oh my God. Mom installed cameras. She recorded whatever was happening. Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. She knew, Dad. She knew something was wrong, and she documented it. There was one more item in the box, a small note in Sandra's handwriting. Password, our foundation, 1961. Think about us. Think about beginnings. Watch everything, then fight. 1961, the year Sandra and I first met as 4-year-olds when our mothers were friends. The foundation of our entire lives together. Kevin pulled out his laptop, connecting to the storage facility's Wi-Fi. His fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing a cloud storage login. Email, Sandra Taylor, backup@cloudmail.com. Password, our foundation, 1961. The screen loaded. A folder appeared. Home Security, March to April 2024. Inside were 47 video files, each one labeled with a date and location. The earliest, March 10th, 2024. The most recent, April 19th, 2024, the day Sandra died. 47 videos, Kevin breathed. Mom recorded everything. I stared at the screen, at my wife's final gift to us. 47 pieces of evidence, 47 windows into what had really happened. Whatever was on these videos, Sandra had risked everything to capture it. She'd spent her last months dying, planning, and fighting to protect us. Kevin's cursor hovered over the first file. "Dad," he said, "are you ready?" I thought about Sandra installing cameras while her heart failed. I thought about Brianna's terrified eyes. I thought about Harrison's calculating smile. "Play it," I said. Kevin clicked. The video opened on our living room, filmed from a high angle near the bookshelf. The quality was surprisingly good. And standing in the middle of my living room, alone, was Harrison Preston. March 10th, 2024, living room, 10:30 a.m. The camera angle was high, positioned on the bookshelf near the ceiling. Sandra must have hidden it among the photo frames and books. The video quality was crystal clear. I could see every detail of our living room. The couch Sandra had picked out, the coffee table, the window overlooking the front yard, and Harrison Preston standing in the middle of it all. I felt Kevin tense beside me. Harrison was alone. He walked around slowly, examining everything like he was appraising merchandise. He picked up our anniversary photo from the side table, Sandra and me on our 30th, laughing on a beach in California. He studied it for a moment, then set it down carelessly. He opened drawers, looked through papers, tried the door to Sandra's office, locked. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. The audio was slightly muffled, but we could hear every word. "Yeah, I'm at the house," Harrison said, his back to the camera. "No, the old man's at work. Place is worth at least $850, maybe $900 if we're lucky." My blood went cold. "Don't worry about the wife." Harrison walked to the fireplace, running his hand along the mantel, the same spot where Sandra's ashes would sit 2 months later. "She's not going to be a problem much longer." Kevin grabbed my arm. "She's sick, Trevor. Heart failure. Doctor said she's got maybe 6 months. Harrison paused, listening. "Once she's gone, we move fast. Yeah, the daughter's on board. I've made sure of that." He walked back to the center of the room, and for just a second, he looked directly at where Sandra had hidden the camera. The expression on his face was pure calculation. "This house is going to save us," he said into the phone. $2.8 million in debt, and this property is our way out. The old man won't even see it coming." Harrison ended the call and left. The video continued for another 30 seconds, just an empty living room, then cut off. Kevin and I sat in complete silence. "He planned it," Kevin finally said, his voice hollow. "Even before Mom died, he was already planning to take the house. She knew." I stared at the frozen screen. "Your mother knew what he was planning, and she recorded it." I thought about Sandra installing that camera while I was at work. Climbing a stepladder in her condition, her heart failing, positioning the device just right, hiding it so carefully that Harrison never noticed, all while knowing what was coming. "There are 46 more videos," Kevin said quietly. "Dad, we need to watch them all, but first..." He looked at Sandra's letter again. "First, we need to call James Cooper." James Cooper's law office was in downtown Denver, on the 15th floor of a glass building with a view of the Rockies. We didn't have an appointment, but when Kevin called from the car and mentioned Sandra Taylor's name, the receptionist told us to come immediately. James was waiting in his office when we arrived. He was in his late 60s, with white hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The walls were lined with law books, and his desk was covered in neat stacks of legal documents. "Kenneth?" He stood and shook my hand, his grip firm. "I've been waiting for this call. I just didn't expect it so quickly." "You knew my wife?" I asked. "For 20 years. We served on the library foundation board together." He gestured for us to sit. "When Sandra came to me in February, she was frightened. She said her family was in danger." "Why didn't she tell me?" James's expression softened. "She was worried about your reaction, and she believed Harrison had people watching the family. If you'd suddenly started moving assets or changing documents, it would have raised red flags." He pulled out a thick folder from his desk drawer. "Sandra was very specific about what she wanted. She came to see me 6 times between January and March. We set up an irrevocable trust, drafted a new will, and documented everything Harrison Preston was doing." "You knew he was after the house?" "I knew he was desperate. Sandra showed me his financial records. She'd done quite a bit of research." James opened the folder. Harrison Preston owes $2.8 million to various creditors. His real estate empire is built on debt, loans he can't pay back, projects that failed, bridges burning everywhere. He's about 3 months from bankruptcy. Kevin leaned forward. So our house is worth approximately $850,000 in the current market. For Harrison, it represents survival. If he can claim it, sell it quickly, and split the proceeds, he clears enough debt to stay afloat. The will he showed me, I said. The one leaving everything to Brianna is either a forgery or it was signed under duress while Sandra was medicated in the hospital. James's voice hardened. The irrevocable trust supersedes any will. The house legally belongs to the trust, with you as the lifetime beneficiary. Harrison has no claim whatsoever. Relief flooded through me. So I can go home? Not yet. We need to file paperwork with the court, present the trust documents, and likely get a restraining order. It'll take a few days. He paused. But yes, Kenneth, yes. That house is yours. Sandra made absolutely certain of it. Kevin pulled out his phone and showed James a photo of the hard drive. Mr. Cooper, Mom also left 47 videos. She installed cameras in the house. We've only watched one so far, but it shows Harrison breaking in, making calls about taking the property. James's eyebrows rose. She actually did it. She said she was going to, but I wasn't sure. He stood abruptly. Kevin, what else is on those videos? We don't know yet, I admitted, but Sandra's letter said to watch all of them. Then that's what we need to do, but not alone. James picked up his phone. I have a contact at Denver PD, Detective Rebecca Anderson. She specializes in elder abuse and financial crimes. Sandra spoke with her briefly in March, but didn't have enough evidence at the time. Now, with these videos, he dialed. Now we might have everything we need. We went back to the storage unit that afternoon with James Cooper and Detective Rebecca Anderson. Rebecca was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. When James explained the situation, she'd cleared her entire afternoon. Your wife contacted me on March 18th, Rebecca said as Kevin set up the laptop again. She said her son-in-law's family was threatening her, but she didn't have concrete proof. I told her to document everything, record conversations if possible, keep a journal. She looked at the hard drive. I didn't expect this. Kevin played the first video again for James and Rebecca. Then we moved to the second. Video 2, March 15th, 2024, 2:34 p.m., Sandra's office. This angle was different, filmed from Sandra's bookshelf, pointing at her desk. Harrison was alone again, sitting in Sandra's chair with her laptop open. We watched as he typed into the search engine. Kevin paused the video and zoomed in on the screen. The search queries were clearly visible. Untraceable heart attack methods, digitalis foxglove cardiac arrest, how to induce heart failure naturally, digitalis poisoning symptoms. Rebecca Anderson stood up abruptly. Jesus Christ, he was researching how to kill her. This is premeditation, James said, his voice tight. This is conspiracy to commit murder. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen, at Harrison Preston researching my wife's death a month before it happened. Kevin played more videos. We spent 2 hours watching Harrison's plan unfold across the screen. Video 5, Harrison and Justin discussing the house value. Once the old lady's gone, we sell immediately. Split 3 ways, me, you, and your mother. Clears most of our debt. Video 7, Harrison trying to access Sandra's safe in the office. When he couldn't open it, he photographed the lock, presumably to hire someone later. Video 11, Linda Preston joining Harrison at the house. Are you sure about this? She asked. Harrison's response, we don't have a choice. It's this or we lose everything. Then we reached video 8, April 25th, 6 days after Sandra died, 6 days after I'd gone to the cemetery alone to grieve. The video showed Brianna sitting on our couch, crying. Harrison sat on her left, Justin on her right. They had her boxed in. I can't do this, Brianna was saying through tears. I can't take Dad's house. Mom just died. Your mother's gone, sweetheart. Harrison's voice was gentle, but his eyes were hard. And your father is going to be fine. We're not throwing him out on the street. We'll make sure he has a nice apartment, somewhere easier for a man his age. But the house was theirs. The house is yours now. Harrison pulled out a document. Your mother left it to you. It's legal. All you have to do is sign this transfer agreement. Brianna's hands shook. I don't know. Justin put his hand on her shoulder. Baby, we've talked about this. My dad's business is in trouble. We're in trouble. We owe $2.8 million. If we don't come up with money soon, we lose everything. The house, our cars, our lives. Your husband needs you, Harrison added. Your family needs you. And it's just a house, Brianna. Your father will understand eventually. What if he fights it? Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. He won't. He's grieving. He's not thinking clearly. By the time he realizes what happened, it'll be too late to contest. Brianna started to shake her head, but Harrison leaned closer. Remember, Amanda, you signed documents related to this property. If this goes to court, you'll be implicated too. You could lose your accounting license. You could face fraud charges. The threat was clear. You're part of this family now, and family takes care of each other, or faces the consequences together. I watched my daughter's face crumple, watched her pick up the pen with trembling hands, watched her sign away at my home while crying. When Justin kissed her cheek afterward, it wasn't affection. It was ownership. The video ended. I stood up and punched the metal wall of the storage unit. Pain shot through my hand, but I didn't care. She didn't betray you, Kevin said, tears streaming down his face. They threatened her. They manipulated her. This is textbook coercive control, Rebecca said quietly. They isolated her, threatened her livelihood, and used her husband as leverage. Brianna is a victim here, not a perpetrator. James was making notes. We can offer her immunity in exchange for testimony. With this video, we can prove she acted under duress. But I was thinking about Sandra's letter. Protect our children. Especially Brianna. My wife had known our daughter was trapped. That's why she documented everything, not just to save the house, but to save Brianna too. We watched more videos. Harrison and Justin discussing the timeline. Linda keeping watch while Harrison searched the house, all of it building a case of conspiracy and elder abuse. Then Kevin's cursor hovered over file number 43, April 19th, 2024, 11:47 p.m., living room. The timestamp made my stomach drop. Sandra died at 3:47 a.m. on April 20th. This video was from 4 hours before her death. Dad, Kevin said quietly. Are you sure? I thought about turning away, about not knowing, about preserving some kind of innocent memory of that night. But Sandra had recorded this for a reason. She'd left it for us to find. Play it, I said. Rebecca moved closer. James put down his pen. The video opened on our living room, dimly lit by a single lamp. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. 3 people sat on our couch, Harrison, Linda, and Justin Preston, in my house, the night my wife died. Is she asleep? That was Justin's voice. Took the pills 20 minutes ago. Harrison. Should be out for hours. Good. Harrison leaned back. Plan B worked better than expected. Faster, too. Linda's voice, nervous. Are you sure this can't be traced? Harrison waved dismissively. Relax. Digitalis is natural, comes from plants. In someone with a failing heart, it just looks like cardiac arrest. Doctors won't even think to test for it. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. The old lady won't be a problem anymore, Harrison continued. And in a few weeks, once the grief settles, we move on the house. Brianna's already signed the paperwork. She's having second thoughts, Justin said. Then remind her what happens if she doesn't cooperate. Harrison's voice turned cold. We're in too deep. That house is worth $850. It's the only way out of this hole. Linda stood, pacing. I still think this is too risky. It's done, Linda. Harrison straightened his jacket. Sandra Taylor took her sleeping pills with a little extra help tonight. By morning, she'll be gone, and no one will ever know. He looked directly at the camera, not seeing it, just coincidentally, and smiled. Now let's get out of here before the old man comes home. The 3 of them left. The video continued for another minute, just an empty room, then ended. Detective Anderson was already on her phone. I need an emergency exhumation order for Sandra Taylor, deceased April 20th. Yes, suspected poisoning, digitalis glycosides. James was pale. Kenneth, I'm so sorry. This is murder, premeditated murder. Kevin had his arms around me, but I couldn't feel anything, couldn't process it. They killed her. Harrison Preston murdered my wife for $850,000, and Sandra had known. She'd installed that camera knowing what was coming. She'd recorded her own murder so that we could get justice. Kenneth, Rebecca ended her call and knelt in front of me. We're going to get them, all three of them, but I need you to stay strong a little longer. How long? My voice sounded far away. The exhumation will take 2 days. Toxicology results another 3. We'll have proof by the end of next week. She gripped my hands. And then Harrison Preston is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. James stood. There's one more thing. Harrison and Linda are throwing a party next Saturday, a housewarming at your house. I heard about it through Denver society circles. They're inviting everyone they know, showing off their new property. Let them, Rebecca said grimly. Let them celebrate. And then we'll show up with 47 videos, toxicology results, and arrest warrants. She looked at me, her expression fierce. Kenneth, we're going to that party, and we're going to destroy him. The next 5 days were a blur of preparation. Detective Anderson expedited the exhumation. I didn't attend. I couldn't bear to watch them dig up Sandra's grave. Kevin went in my place and came back pale and silent. The toxicology results came back on day 3. Dale Ferguson, the forensic analyst, called me personally. Mr. Taylor, he said quietly, I found digitalis glycosides in your wife's tissue samples, concentrated levels consistent with acute poisoning, not therapeutic use. This wasn't an accident. Sandra was murdered. I sat down on David Miller's couch and cried for an hour. But the tears weren't just grief anymore. They were rage. James Cooper spent those days preparing our legal counterattack, emergency motions to void the eviction, cease and desist letters to Harrison, Linda, and Justin, trust documents proving the house was mine. Every I dotted, every T crossed. Detective Anderson prepared arrest warrants, murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, fraud. She assembled a team of officers and ran through the plan a dozen times. We need them to incriminate themselves publicly, Rebecca explained during one of our meetings, with witnesses present. The videos are solid evidence, but if we can get Harrison to admit what he did in front of 30 people, his lawyers won't have anywhere to hide. What about Brianna? I asked. That question had kept me up every night. My daughter was still living in that house with murderers. We extract her during the party, Rebecca said. With witnesses present, Harrison can't hurt her without exposing himself. We'll offer her immunity for full cooperation. James added, and we'll need you there, Kenneth. You and Kevin. This is your house, your family. You should be there when justice is served. On Friday afternoon, the invitation arrived at David's house, cream-colored cardstock with elegant lettering. Harrison and Linda Preston cordially invite you to a new beginning celebration. Saturday, June 22nd, 7 p.m., 1247 Ridgeview Drive, Lakewood. My address, my home. Harrison was throwing a party to celebrate stealing my life. Kevin looked at the invitation and said coldly, perfect. Let's go to this party. Saturday evening, 7 p.m. Kevin drove us to the house, my house. Cars lined the street, expensive vehicles gleaming under the streetlights. Through the windows, I could see people mingling in my living room, holding wine glasses, laughing. James Cooper met us at the door. He looked sharp in a suit, briefcase in hand. The AV equipment is set up. The team told everyone it's for a family slideshow later. Detective Anderson is inside with 2 undercover officers. Harrison has no idea what's coming. And Brianna? She's here. She looks terrified, but she's here. I took a deep breath. Kevin squeezed my shoulder. Ready, Dad? Let's finish this. We walked in together. The house looked completely different. Donna had redecorated. New curtains, new furniture, new art on the walls. Every trace of Sandra, every memory of our 33 years together erased. There were about 35 guests clustered in groups admiring the house. Harrison's type, wealthy Denver society, overdressed and fake smiling. I recognized a few faces from charity events Sandra and I used to attend. Harrison saw us first. He was standing by the fireplace, the exact spot where Sandra's urn had briefly sat, holding a scotch and talking to a couple I didn't recognize. His face went pale for just a second before he recovered, plastering on a smile. Kenneth? He crossed the room toward us, hand extended. What a surprise. I didn't think you'd come. You invited me, I said. I didn't shake his hand. Well, yes, of course. His eyes flicked to James. "And you brought your lawyer. How formal." "Mr. Preston," James said, his voice ice cold, "we have some legal matters to discuss." "This is a party," Harrison said, smile tightening. "Hardly the place for—" "It's exactly the place," I interrupted. Linda appeared beside Harrison, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Kenneth, how nice of you to come, though I'm not sure why you brought such a large group." I spotted Detective Anderson near the doorway, her badge hidden, but her eyes alert. 2 other officers were scattered among the guests, pretending to be socialites, and in the corner, partially hidden behind a group of people, I saw Brianna. My daughter looked terrible, thin, pale, exhausted. When our eyes met, hers filled with tears. Justin stood next to her, his hand possessively on her shoulder, keeping her in place. "Harrison," I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "we need to talk about this house." Conversations began to die down. People turned to watch. Harrison's smile became strained. "Kenneth, this really isn't appropriate. This house belongs to me," I said clearly. "Not you, not Brianna, me." Now everyone was listening. James stepped forward, pulling documents from his briefcase. Original deed from 1995. Owner, Sandra Waverly Taylor. He held it up. No joint ownership. No mention of Harrison Preston or his family. He pulled out another document. Irrevocable trust, dated March 1st, 2024, placing this house in trust for Kenneth Taylor's lifetime use, notarized, legal, and filed with the county. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones were coming out. Linda's voice turned shrill. "Those are forgeries! You doctored those!" "All verified with county records," James said smoothly. "The will Harrison used to evict Kenneth was either forged or signed under duress. This house never legally belonged to Brianna." Harrison's face was red now. "This is absurd. Everyone, I'm sorry for this disruption. We're not done," I said. "There's something else everyone should see." I nodded to Kevin. He moved to the AV equipment in the corner, the projector and screen the hired company had set up earlier. Harrison's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Showing the truth," Kevin said. He connected his laptop to the projector. The screen flickered to life. The white wall where Linda had hung an expensive abstract painting became our canvas. "March 10th, 2024, I announced to the room. "My wife Sandra installed security cameras in this house. She recorded everything that happened while she was dying." The first video began to play. The room fell silent as Harrison appeared on the screen, alone in my living room, making his phone call. "Place is worth at least $850. Don't worry about the wife. She's not going to be a problem much longer." Gasps from the guests. Someone said, "Oh my God." Harrison tried to move toward the projector. Detective Anderson stepped forward, blocking him. She still hadn't revealed her badge, but her stance was clear. "Keep watching," I said. Kevin played video after video. The room watched in growing horror as Harrison researched untraceable heart attack methods on Sandra's laptop. Harrison and Justin discussed selling my house for profit. Split 3 ways, clears our debt. Harrison told Linda, "The old man won't even see it coming." Guests were backing away from Harrison now. Several were filming on their phones. One woman was crying. Then Kevin played video 8, Brianna being coerced. The room watched as Harrison and Justin boxed in my daughter, as they threatened her career, her future. As Harrison said coldly, "If this goes to court, you'll be implicated too." I looked across the room. Brianna had broken away from Justin and was crying openly, one hand over her mouth. When that video ended, I spoke directly to my daughter. "Brianna, I know you didn't want this. I know they threatened you. I know you were scared." She shook her head, tears streaming. Justin tried to grab her arm, but Kevin was suddenly there, shoving him back. "Don't touch her," Kevin said, his voice dangerous. Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "This is a private family matter. Everyone, please." "There's one more video," James said loudly. "The most important one." He looked at me. I nodded. Kevin's fingers moved over the keyboard. The screen changed. April 19th, 2024, 11:47 p.m., living room. The timestamp appeared on screen. Someone in the crowd whispered, "That's the night Sandra Taylor died." The video played. The room watched in absolute horrified silence as Harrison, Linda, and Justin sat on my couch and discussed my wife's murder. "Digitalis is natural, comes from plants. Doctors won't even test for it. The old lady won't be a problem anymore. Plan B worked better than expected." When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Then one guest screamed, others started shouting, several people rushed for the door. Harrison stood frozen, his face gray. Detective Anderson pulled out her badge. "Detective Rebecca Anderson, Denver PD, Harrison Preston, you're under arrest for the murder of Sandra Taylor." Two uniformed officers burst through the front door, weapons drawn. "Get down on the ground," one shouted. "Now!" Harrison tried to run. He actually bolted toward the back hallway. One officer tackled him to the floor, wrenching his arms behind his back. "Those videos are fake!" Harrison screamed as they handcuffed him. "Edited! This is illegal!" "Your wife recorded them in her own home," Rebecca said coldly. "Perfectly legal, and we exhumed Sandra's body. Toxicology confirmed digital is poisoning. You murdered her, and we have proof." She turned to Justin. "Justin Preston, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Justin didn't fight. He just stood there as officers cuffed him, staring at the screen where his father's confession still played on loop. "Linda Preston," Rebecca continued, "you're under arrest as an accessory to murder." Linda collapsed, sobbing. "I didn't know. I didn't think he was serious." "You were there," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You heard him talk about Digitalis, and you did nothing. You let him kill my wife." As the officers dragged Harrison, Linda, and Justin out in handcuffs, Brianna ran across the room and threw herself into my arms. "Daddy," she sobbed, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about Mom. I swear I didn't know they killed her. I thought she just died. They told me it was natural." "Shh." I held her tight, stroking her hair like I used to when she was little. "I know, sweetheart, I know. You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." Kevin wrapped his arms around both of us. The three of us stood there, holding each other, while police secured the scene and shocked guests gave statements. Outside, I could hear Harrison still screaming threats as they loaded him into the police car. But inside, for the first time in months, my family was together again. The trial began in September, 3 months after Harrison's arrest. It lasted 2 weeks, but the outcome was never in doubt. The prosecution presented all 47 videos, authenticated by 3 independent forensic experts. They presented the toxicology report showing lethal levels of Digitalis in Sandra's tissue. They presented Harrison's financial records, the $2.8 million in debt that had driven him to murder. Brianna testified with an immunity deal. She was calm, composed, and devastating. She described 6 years of isolation, manipulation, and psychological abuse. She described being forced to sign eviction papers while terrified for her husband's future. She described believing her mother had died naturally, only to discover months later that she'd been living with murderers. The defense tried to argue the videos were inadmissible. They tried to claim Sandra had given Harrison permission to be in the house. They tried to suggest the Digitalis was accidental contamination. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, I read Sandra's letter aloud in court, her final message about protecting family and fighting for truth. My voice broke several times, but I made it through. Judge William Hayes sentenced Harrison Preston to 35 years in prison, no parole for 25 years. Justin received 18 years, no parole for 12. Linda took a plea deal, 3 years probation in exchange for full testimony. As they led Harrison out of the courtroom in chains, he looked at me one last time. I met his eyes and said quietly, "Sandra won. She beat you, even in death." 1 year later. June 2025, 1 year after the party that changed everything. I stood in downtown Denver, looking up at bronze letters catching the morning sun, Sandra Taylor Foundation for Elder Abuse Survivors. Brianna stood beside me in a professional suit, holding the ribbon-cutting scissors. She'd spent the past year in therapy, rebuilding herself. She'd divorced Justin, recertified as a forensic accountant, and poured herself into creating something meaningful from her trauma. Kevin was inside, setting up for the opening ceremony. He'd moved back to Denver permanently to serve as the foundation's education director. "Ready, Dad?" Brianna asked. I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her. The fear was gone from her eyes. The hollow emptiness had been replaced with purpose and strength. "Your mother would be so proud of you," I said. Brianna's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Let's make her prouder." Inside, dozens of people filled the main room, survivors of financial abuse, family members seeking help, James Cooper serving as legal counsel, Detective Anderson in uniform, David and Rebecca Miller, and so many others whose lives Sandra's courage had touched. Brianna stepped to the podium. 1 year ago, she said, her voice steady, I watched videos my mother recorded knowing she was about to be murdered. Videos that saved my father, saved me, and brought killers to justice. My mother couldn't save herself, but she saved us. Today, we open this foundation to honor her memory and help other families fight back. She outlined the services: free legal consultation, temporary housing, financial planning, a 24/7 hotline. If you're being threatened or coerced by family, Brianna said, looking directly at the crowd, you don't have to fight alone. We're here. We understand. We'll help you find your way home. After the ceremony, an elderly woman approached Brianna nervously. My son wants to sell my house and put me in a facility, she whispered. But I don't want to leave. It's my home. Brianna took the woman's hands, and I saw Sandra's fierce protectiveness in my daughter's eyes. What's your name? Eleanor? Eleanor, you're not alone anymore. We're going to help you. I watched Brianna begin the work her mother had started, and I felt Sandra's presence so strongly it took my breath away. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But now, because of Sandra's 47 videos, because of her courage and planning and love, no one had to fight alone. That Sunday, I visited Sandra's grave with fresh sunflowers. Brianna and Kevin came with me. We sat together on the grass beside the headstone. Hi, Mom, Brianna said softly. The foundation opened yesterday. We helped 3 families already. It's going to work, Mom. Your plan is working. Kevin added, thanks for the cameras. Thanks for protecting us, even when we didn't know we needed it. I touched the cool granite of Sandra's headstone. The inscription we'd chosen together years ago read, She loved fiercely and protected fearlessly. Thank you, my love, I whispered. For everything. For the cameras, for the trust, for saving our family. For showing us that love doesn't end with death. It becomes something greater. It becomes justice. It becomes legacy. The wind picked up, rustling through the pine trees. A bird sang overhead. For just a moment, I could have sworn I felt Sandra's hand on my shoulder. You're still protecting us, aren't you? I said, smiling through tears. Brianna and Kevin put their hands on the stone beside mine. The 3 of us sat there in the morning sunlight, healing together, carrying Sandra's mission forward. Truth had won, love had won, and Sandra Taylor, librarian, wife, mother, hero, would protect families forever through the foundation that bore her name.